factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya. And this week, my question to you is coming from you from some thoughts we got from last week. Was here's the thought. This is, why are we so scared of conflict? Why are we so terrified of conflict? I'm hearing people that have been dating for 6 months and are breaking up over text or just ghosting each other because they're afraid to actually be in the same room with each other and have a real conversation about what's going well and what's going wrong. I've heard of marriages breaking up just because it was just easier to break up than actually have the conversations about how to fix things. I hear stories about people leaving companies and going and finding a job somewhere else because it was easier to find a different company to work for than have an honest conversation with your manager going, hey, what do I need to do to get a raise and a promotion? We are terrified. We're terrified of conflict at all different levels. And I'm talking about small kids all the way up to people in their 70s, 80s, and beyond. And I think we need to find out, first of all, why. How do we address this? And how do we make it better? So, Syya, I'd love for you to know on this.
Conflict is unpleasant, right? When we are feeling conflicted, there's something not right in our universe. So we're off center, off balance, and no one loves that feeling. So if we know that if we have a relationship with one another where it's off kilter and off balance, it's not pleasant to recognize that there's a problem, because we want everything to be copacetic. We want everything to be, unicorns and roses and butterflies. And unfortunately, when there is a fundamental break in a relationship, it's usually because of lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it means, in a lot of ways, do you have the proper communication skills to articulate when things go great? Because when everything's going great and we're winning, everyone's high-fiving. Everyone's amazing.
Yes.
Everyone's a rock star. But when what hits the fan, everyone's a loser, and it's definitely not me.
No, it's your fault. It's absolutely your fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault.
It's your fault. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's human nature. I think it's the same thing with why can't we address conflict, is a lot of it is what can we offer and receive and give feedback, right? Anything constructive, anything that's going to possibly hurt someone's emotions, ego, their self-worth. You don't want to be that a-hole that says, who broke Peter? Oh, that would be me. You know what I mean? Like, no
I did. I broke Peter.
Right? Like, I mean, I do think I don't have children, but if I had my options and I did have children, I probably would want to work with them very young. And you at 2 years old, when they have their tantrums and stuff, right? They're basically giving you immediate feedback. They're telling you 100%, I am conflicted with you.
And I'm not putting up with it anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's as for you parental peoples that procreated and have to go through all that, I would love to know what techniques you've used that you feel has been successful. I don't know that answer.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a parent of a single child. Okay, he's fully grown, and he's living on his own and all that kind of stuff. And for the most part, he's extremely well adjusted. But I look at that whole generation that he grew up with, where if something was wrong, all of a sudden the parents were jumping to their defense. It was just the kids were not allowed to have conflict amongst themselves. The parents had to get involved, whether it was with another parent or whether it was with the school or with another kid or whatever. It was and the schools themselves were doing everything and anything they could do not to have conflict. I mean, everybody got a gold star, everybody got a blue ribbon, and if you couldn't get your project done on time, that's okay. We'll just give you a little bit of extra time. But it reads to a point where you get these kids going to university and you get parents that are going up to their professors and trying to pull this stuff to university professors, and university professors go, I don't care. This is not my problem. And I think you're raising a generation of kids that don't know how to speak up for themselves and say, hey, listen, this is bothering me. Can we talk about this? Instead of it just being us versus them and pointing fingers and laying blame somewhere else, because they've been taught their entire lives that it's all right. You can always put the blame on somebody else and it's never your fault.
Yeah.
And
Or mommy and daddy will handle it.
yeah, or mommy and daddy will handle it. And mommy and daddy will tell you that it was somebody else's fault, not you, their own little precious, snowflake. I may be a little harsh on this, but I come from the generation of parenthood that I probably belonged in the 1950s, where my parents said, "Go out and get dirty, scrape
No,
a knee, scrape a knee, wash your hands, wash your elbows,
we were
wash your knees."
practically, by today's standards, you understand, we would be neglected kids growing up because
Absolutely,
we're the epitome of latchkey, right? Like, yeah, hey, when the lights come on, come home. That's it.
yeah,
Like, I don't care what you do throughout the day. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I had to be home for dinner, and then after dinner, I had to be home when the street lights came on. And I had to make sure that my homework was done. Other than that, there were not 17 different programs that I was being shuffled to on a weekly basis. None of that existed.
Okay, so can I let me be the contrarian? Because you know what, when you're talking about and again, we're talking about millennials, but they're pushing 40 years old too, okay?
Oh
And we're
yeah,
talking about some Gen Zs are now pushing 30. Gen Zs are starting to push towards 30. I mean, where is time going, right?
yeah.
But so let me ask you this though. I mean, I know we made fun of the millennials and all that good stuff, but realistically speaking, like, is it a stereotype, or is it just we were just hitting on the time frame of when 20-year-olds are considered flaky because they're still finding themselves. They, maybe haven't been able to assert themselves, or maybe didn't need to assert themselves. But as you enter in your 30s, you're now well into your career. You have additional obligations. You're obligated to your family that you might have now, a spouse or whatever, or your parents that are, as they age. I just wonder if all these generational speaks that I speak of, and you and I joke about it and stuff, but realistically speaking, what if it's just cyclical? Call it whatever you want.
Okay, okay. I'm going to take it from there and say I was raised by pre-war parents.
Hmm.
Okay, my dad was born in 38. My mom was born in 42, so she was born in the middle of the war.
Hmm.
The parents, the post-war boom, 5-10 years younger, it was a completely different mentality. People that were raised either before the war or during the war had a completely different outlook on life than the ones that are post-war, that were the boomers, that were the children of the 60s, and the 70s, who raised their children because they didn't want to be, they were rebelling about how they were raised as kids. And we as parents, in a lot of cases, we're rebelling about the way that the strict way that our parents raised us. So I think we're trying to raise our kids differently than how we were raised, and we want better for our children, and we want to give them more, and we want to give them more opportunity and more ability to be free thinkers, or whatever we want them to be. And with that, a lot of the structures and the rules and a lot of the things that sit there and say, you know what, society has rules for a reason, because if society doesn't have rules, we have anarchy. And it's a matter of sitting there going, to what yes, there's to what levels, and it's a continuum and all that. I will get that. However, I would say that the way that I was raised by my parents are different than people were raised by parents that were 10 years younger or 15 years younger than my parents.
So, okay,
And
if you
people
think,
are 15 years younger than I am, who are the
right,
millennials.
right, right. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. My parents too were pre-war, folks in the 30s, 33 and 35, my parents. But I wonder, with each life experience, with everything that's going on in the world and how they've addressed conflict. World War II was supposed to be a world a war that ended all wars, right? Like it
and
was,
didn't.
and obviously didn't. It didn't last that long. It was like what, 5 years later we're in Korea, right? So
Hmm.
I I am trying to figure out, is there something technique wise? If anyone wants to interject and add on and let us know. Like when it comes to conflict resolution, addressing conflict and being able to come to some level of resolution, I do think we've lost the art of a nice, comfortable debate. And I think sometimes you and I gnaw on this on purpose to really get our brains thinking outside how we normally do. Though you and I typically agree, we probably need to work on that a little bit better. But but
But we
what
look at the
techniques
us
would we
versus,
suggest? Wait, okay, so it's fine. We
yeah.
acknowledge we don't know how to address conflict very well. So what would you recommend that we do? That someone that
I think we
needs to do
have to
it.
learn how to listen better. We have to learn how to communicate better, and we have to learn that just because somebody disagrees with us doesn't make them wrong. I think that's the biggest fundamental thing that we have in society, and why we've become such a dichotomy in the world today, whether it be politics, whether it be religion, whether it be business, social structure, whatever it is. It's the us versus them, is because everybody's viewpoint is, if you're not just like me, you're wrong. And people are unwilling to believe that somebody else's opinion, based on their experiences, based on their life, based on how they live, how they were raised, their education, their socioeconomic experience, their religious experience, their whatever experience, that's their point of view. And there it says, well, somebody says, it says, well, you're not speaking my truth. Well, truth is truth. Truth is truth. Truth is truth. It says, you have your opinion, I have my opinion. Neither one of us are smart enough to know what the truth really is, because we've never discovered all of the factors that make up the truth. But you have your opinion, I have my opinion, but neither one of us have the truth, and we probably never will. But we're all sitting there living our own truths. And I think we need to get away from that ridiculous construct and get to a point where we're saying, he says, you know what? They have an opinion, I have my opinion. I say potato, they say potato. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just a different way of looking at it.
Let's call it a day.
And let's call the whole thing off.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Let's call the whole thing off. Yes, yes. You know, I'm glad that there is more acknowledgement of feelings and emotions, because I am not considered I'm emotional, but I'm not considered the most warm and fuzzies thing. I used to be, and I don't know what happened over the years. I think I'm a little bit more jaded, maybe a little bit more like, I've been burnt a few times, a time of 10, right? That I'm kind of like not as giving of the love, unconditional love, as freely as I used to, just because some people just took advantage of it, or worst part, think it's a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think sometimes, and I'm saying this because everyone, for those that really know my personality and me, uh, I try to avoid conflict at all costs. So I've learned to gloss it over, smooth it over, put on a smile on my face. Meanwhile, I'm probably seething on the inside or churning, whatever anxiety or upsetness, whatever have you. So it's not healthy, I think, to not have the ability to address conflict. I know I'm a work in progress when it comes to that. I'm bad when it comes to addressing conflict, because
I think we all are.
I think I just learned over the years it's easier just to like, especially if if you've witnessed, like, child upbringing. If my parents argued or whatever, they try to argue it away from us, but there are times, they're humans. They argued in front of us kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whatever I picked up, I know I didn't want that. And so I notice myself whenever I'm upset with my partner, I just go into silent mode, because I want to calm down, want to make sure I don't say anything that I'm going to regret. And then before I know it, I forgot, because I have ADD, ADHD, and then I forget that I'm mad, and then I never address the issue. That's my problem. That's a problem. It's not intentional, but
And
I
I
do
think
do
we
that.
all need to be worried of the people who go silent, because the people who go silent, there's usually stuff happening way deep underneath the surface that if we don't address it, it's going to come out like a bomb. So, and usually when you least expect it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So let's leave it there. I think we all need to sit there and say, you know what? We need to listen more. We need to communicate more. We need to be more willing to say, hey, maybe my opinion is not the right opinion, or maybe there's other opinions that are just as valid as the one that I have. Doesn't mean I have to agree with them. It just means I have to acknowledge that they exist. So I'm Ben.
And I'm Syya.
We'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not on This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Not on This, Business Bites.